Co-op is a program that allows students to earn secondary school credits while working in a placement in the community. There's 6 key components to a cooperative education program, and eliminating any of these components puts the credibility of that co-op placement in jeopardy, and also the OSSD in terms of the credibility of the credits the students would learn. We need to be aware of the fact that each of these components is important, and that each of these components takes a considerable amount of time. With the exception of the classroom component, each of the other components are delivered individually to students on an individual time frame. This has to be the ultimate form of differentiated instruction. Take the example of a 2-credit co-op program where you have 220 hours, you have 22 students, and you have a co-op teacher. All students who are going to be in a co-op program must have an interview before they're accepted into the program. The purpose of that interview is to determine the student's readiness for a placement and also the availability of a placement for that student related to the course that they have taken in school. An interview takes about half an hour per student. So for those 22 students, you'll see on the pie chart it takes about 11 hours for that to happen. A placement will only be successful if you've done a good job of making the match. Many co-op teachers will say that they see their job as being the ultimate matchmaker. So finding that successful placement for that student that meets their strengths and interests, and an employer who understands and is willing to work with that student, is very important. Of course, there are some placements that you've used before that you can use for these students, but there's always a number of new placements that you need to get in order to meet the needs of the current students that you have. So this takes, in time, about half an hour per student if you're lucky, but for those students where you have to find new placements, it would take more than that. I've used the example of half an hour per student, so once again on the pie chart you'll notice that that takes another 11 hours. This is the part where a teacher goes out and visits each of the placements, potential placements for a student, and assesses whether or not it is a safe workplace for that student, and also whether or not the opportunities are there for the maximum learning of the student. So these placements must be assessed. Even if the placement has been used before, there must be a way of reassessing that placement to make sure that it meets all the requirements for a co-op placement. So for each individual student, that takes approximately an hour and a half for a teacher to assess that placement, and it needs to happen prior to the student going out. Some boards and schools have developed strategies such as having an on-call for a co-op teacher to enable them to go out, or having an opportunity in the summer for a teacher to get a couple of lieu days to do the placement assessments at that time, and then they take the opportunity for time off later. But the important thing to remember is that it does need to happen, and it does need to happen before the student goes to the workplace. So you'll notice on the pie chart, 33 hours, 1.5 hours per student is what we've allotted for this program for the 22 students. All students in a cooperative education program must have a minimum of 15 hours of pre-placement. And in that time, they have instruction around workplace health and safety, rules and regulations of the workplace. We get them ready for success in the workplace. After they go to the workplace, students are also required to take part in integration. And that's an opportunity for the students to come back and to meet with other students in their program who are all in different placements and talk about their experiences and learn from each other. You must do a minimum of 7 hours of integration for every credit. So for our students in this 2-credit program, they have 15 hours of pre-placement, they have 14 hours of integration. The classroom component is 30 hours for this 2-credit program. What this really is an individual course of study for each student. So in this PPLP, the teacher takes the expectations from the related course that the student is demonstrating at the workplace. They pull those expectations that the student will be able to show, and they put them in this personalized placement learning plan. It takes a lot of time because you have to work with the student, you have to work with an employer, and ideally you also get some information from the subject teacher who actually taught that course, so that you know the expectations that were emphasized and you're able to reflect that in the learning plan. Doing a PPLP takes approximately an hour and a half per student. It's important within a school that the teachers and the administration realize that the co-op credits the student is getting are not co-op credits. What they are is subject credits, such as a science credit, being delivered through co-op. So the student's transcript actually shows that that was 2 more science credits that they achieved. We've indicated 30 hours for this 2-credit co-op program. The final and 6th component of the Cooperative Education program is the monitoring. And monitoring consists of 2 parts. There's the monitoring for assessment and evaluation, and there's monitoring to assist the student with any difficulties. So we call it this troubleshooting part of the monitoring process. Cooperative education teachers are required to conduct 3 monitoring visits for each credit that a student is earning in co-op. So for a student in a 2-credit co-op program, that means 6 visits or 6 monitoring visits to the workplace. 2 of those visits could be done electronically or by phone, but the other 4 require personal visits by the teacher to the workplace. You'll notice that monitoring takes up 143 hours or 6.5 hours per student for our 2-credit co-op program. Assessment happens at the workplace for the workplace component by the teacher meeting with the employer, meeting with the student, observing student activities at the workplace, getting feedback from the employer on their performance. And on the basis of that information, the co-op teacher determines an appropriate mark or appropriate evaluation for that student. The other important function of monitoring by a co-op teacher is to support the student and the placement throughout the process. So a co-op teacher does a lot of troubleshooting, does a lot of working with the student in terms of dealing with issues that might be conflicting with their co-op placement, in terms of working with the employer, helping them in their struggle with teaching the student the appropriate things at that workplace. All students require some support. Some students require a lot of support. So putting a student at risk in a co-op placement requires more time because of that troubleshooting support role within monitoring. Throughout the placement, students are constantly assessing and reassessing what their strengths are, what their interests are, and that co-op teacher plays a key role in helping them determine what they will do after their co-op experience is finished.